All right, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Studio 118, brought to you by Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. Come, let us reason, says the Lord. And that's what we're here to do. We tackle tough theological and apologetic topics here on our show. And we just want to get you guys thinking and have some really good conversations out there. So thank you for tuning in. You might be joining us via YouTube live stream. If so, welcome. We ask you to jump on that live chat and say hello, but also remember we do have Q&A after our discussion, and we'd love to hear your questions. By the way, I'm Reuben. This is Bunjee.
Hey.
Welcome. So yeah, we got our YouTube live stream going on and the live chat. Jump on there, or you can be tuning in on Austin Cable Access Channel 11. If so, welcome. You too have an opportunity to send in your questions for our Q&A portion. You can call in your questions at 512-576-5433. We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're online tuning in, feel free to smash that like button and share and subscribe. This is what online SEO courses tell me to do. And so we ask you to do the same. Thank you for joining us. We got another really good discussion queued up for you guys. We've been away for a couple of weeks. We've been just really anxious to get back here in front of the cameras for you guys. But we're here. We're talking about living in the last days. And we'll jump into it in a little bit. But I do want to remind you one more thing. We are here live at Calvary South Austin in Austin, Texas. And we do join up here on Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. We invite you to come join us for some praise and worship and a Bible study on Sunday mornings at 9:15 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. Take your pick. Come join us face to face. We'd love to have you here. Or during the week on Wednesday evenings, we gather here at 7 p.m. So again, if you have any questions about what we're here to do, what we're about, again, feel free to call our church. That number again is 512-576-5433. We'd love to hear from you. All right, well, Bunjee, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
It's good to be back. I got the, I guess it was Omicron. I have no way of knowing.
One of the variants, yeah.
Some variant. I don't know if it was Deltacron or Omegacron or Decepticon or
yeah.
It was one of them.
Yeah, you got pummeled, right?
Yeah, it was, I don't want to act like I'm some big tough guy or something, but, I got the chills one night, woke up the next day, took some ivermectin.
Yeah.
And feel a lot better.
Now, with the chills, were they multiplying? That's what I got to know.
Yeah, they were.
Okay.
I was chilling.
You had a little Saturday night fever there?
Yeah.
All right.
I never got a fever.
Oh, really?
No, there was that Wednesday 2 weeks ago when I felt like I had cedar fever.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to make sure, it wasn't, COVID, I took a antigen test.
Mm-hmm.
It was negative. And so I thought, sure, yeah, this is just cedar fever. Went to church, taught the study that night. And by the time I got home, I started feeling a lot worse and started getting the chills. So I just, tucked myself in bed and read myself a bedtime story and went to sleep. And, so I woke up the next morning and still, was feeling just really under the weather. So started taking ivermectin and then took another antigen test, and that one came back positive.
Yep.
So at that point in time, I was like, okay, I'm on house arrest.
Yeah.
I wasn't, going to go spread my disease to a bunch of other people, so I just stayed home and, rested and, I never really, past that first, as soon as I took ivermectin, it was like pretty much all the symptoms were gone.
Yeah.
And
what's that? We've been kicked off YouTube already?
Well,
okay,
my bad. Yeah, they don't want me to feel good. But what I meant to say is, as soon as I started taking crack cocaine, that's when I started feeling better. How's that?
We go.
How's that, YouTube? Is that better? But no, I took some ivermectin and chills went away. You know, I had a slight cough. Never had a fever though. Never really felt that bad. Just kind of felt like a mediocre cold.
Yeah.
You know, so just
Interesting.
chilled out.
Never tried cowbell, huh?
I did not. I did.
the only prescription.
I didn't have a fever.
Okay.
So I didn't reach for the Pringles or the cowbell.
I guess. Very nice.
But yeah, so you know, that being that, you know, Thursday.
Yeah.
When I tested positive that Thursday, that's when we had this scheduled.
Yeah. A couple weeks back.
And so I was just like, well, I'm not gonna go up there and you know, get everybody else sick and all. But
Yeah.
So stayed home, you know, and just continue to get better and better. And so, you know, now I'm back in my daily routine, back on the mountain bike, you know, back to doing what I do.
Nice.
Yep. So here we are.
Yes, we're back.
Super excited. Love this topic.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, I guess last week, that's when my family fell ill.
Yep.
And just one thing on top of another, right?
So we had
So
to push it out twice.
Yep.
You know, just to make sure everybody was feeling well enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. You know, I've heard, you know, that ivermectin is a miracle drug, and I was hoping it would like fix my face, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't do that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't have a recommendation for you.
Still look the same.
It's all right. You know, it's like when you tell your grandma, you look good.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's okay.
So now, in your eyes, I'm like your grandma.
Yeah, you're closer to heaven. It's okay. Yeah. Now, does that count as lying? Next topic.
That's another show.
Yeah.
That's another show where we'll have to interview B.F. Skinner.
Yes, I don't know who that is, but that's all right. Oh, wait. Is that a Simpsons reference?
No, but close.
All right.
Yeah. He's one of those situational ethicists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, living in the last days, we're glad to be here. And yeah, let's talk about the last days. Days. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Like even just in the past 2 years, you know, we've had riots, we've had this whole deal with coronavirus spreading and just the controversy surrounding what world leaders are implementing in their nations and then how far people are willing to go in order to make sure that they're kept safe and the population is kept safe, that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, you have stuff that is kind of out of our control. You have natural disasters, you know, popping up and destroying towns and displacing, you know, many people. Right. And so, of course, if you've spent any time talking to a Christian or even just watching movies and stuff like that, I was like, man, stuff is heating up. Is the world going to end soon? Is it all going to come to a halt? And are we going to be... are we done for, basically, right? So I bet you this question is popping up in a lot of people's minds as over the past couple of years, especially with coronavirus and all the protocols that have come to pass. And so, yeah, we asked that question: are we living in the last days, and how much time do we have? That kind of stuff.
And you know, if you look at the progressive left, I mean, they've been threatening the end of time, you know, since at least, you know, Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth video.
Yes, the hockey stick
right.
slope there.
The inconvenient hockey stick truth.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they've been saying that the world's going to end in the next 10 years for at least, 30 years now?
Yes. I think it's now, we have 10 years to turn it around, or it's...
Again.
Yeah, or it's just complete catastrophe.
Yeah.
Apocalypse
I mean, if
happening.
Greta Thunberg has taught me anything... It's that.
Has she really? If okay.
How to rickroll an audience? She did teach me that.
How dare you? How dare you? I'm supposed to be at school. That was my best. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Greta.
No, that was horrible.
Yeah, I'll try better. Well, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we definitely have doomsday prophets.
Yeah. Within
Christianity and without.
Yes, there. I mainly just hear the news coming from without, right? Especially when it comes to you have already with coronavirus on people's minds, and people are more aware of like how they're treating themselves and how they're treating the world, that kind of stuff. And of course, you have politicians who take advantage of that, and we saw a controversy with CNN kind of being exposed, and their plans about, okay, well, after Trump leaves office, this is what we plan to basically pound people over the head with, is climate change.
Climate change.
Yeah. And so, there is this big push of, okay, we need to implement policies, and we need people to feel it. That way they kind of get the sense of urgency that, these politicians feel, at least, to get stuff passed. There's a lot of stuff just in the in the pipeline coming on down. And then, of course, you have world leaders just outside of the U.S. just jumping onto it and doing their thing. So, again, this question, living in the last days, are we coming soon to an end? And, we decided then that we would focus in on a specific chapter in the Bible that kind of lays it out nicely for us about, hey, well, these are certain things to watch out for. Are we seeing these things happen? And if so, that'll give us a good indicator as to where we're at in terms of the last days.
And it's important to remember that, in the eyes of the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. So when we talk about the last days, well, what does that look like in God's economy? What does that look like on his calendar? And then even recognizing that Paul himself announced that that he was in the last days.
Yeah.
And he was writing, 2,000 years ago.
He believed it was imminent.
Right.
Yeah.
So, even in the New Testament epistles, we see language as if, they believe that they were in the last days. And, in the context of a day being like 1,000 years, I guess you could say that since they wrote, it's only really been 2 days in the economy of God.
Yes. Just 2 sleep cycles, huh? Yeah, that is very interesting to put it that way. That, even growing up, with Christian parents, and definitely hearing this message of living in the last days, just like Paul believed it was imminent. And I knew my share of skeptics, family members and friends that were skeptical of the idea that, well, it's been 2,000 years.
Right.
If it's going to happen, why hasn't it happened yet? And that was kind of like their way around it. Their way around, if God doesn't care enough, and maybe it's not even true. Maybe this isn't going to happen. So It's been 2,000 years. Why are we harping on this as if it's going to happen tomorrow? If it's going to happen, it should have happened already.
Yeah.
So I can sympathize, or rather I can relate and understand where they're coming from, just because I heard it growing up. So I think this will be a perfect chapter to delve into, and basically, at the very least, let people know we need to be aware more of what's going on in the world around us, for sure.
Bet.
So then, why don't we get to, first of all, why don't we start just predicting and get some date setting out of the way?
Yeah, let's just do that.
Over, under. I say 15 years.
Yeah.
Under 15 years.
I'm gonna let you make all these predictions and just sit here.
Nice.
Yeah, I certainly agree with the Lord Jesus Christ that when he tells us that no one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels in heaven, right? And so then the question is, so how is it that Jesus, if he is God incarnate, how is it that he didn't know the day or the hour, but only the Father in heaven, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that whole question of how is it that Jesus doesn't even know the day or the hour of whether we're talking about the rapture of the church or whether we're talking about the second coming of Christ. Some people put those two events together at the same time, so just depending on what camp you fall in. But I would just, quickly point out that the Lord Jesus Christ has two natures. He is 100% man and 100% God. And in some sort of supernatural way, the deity of Jesus Christ, which includes his omniscience or his all-knowingness, was in some way, I guess, blindfolded, if you will, by his finite human brain. And in this way, it's important to understand that Jesus is not a human being animated by the power of his deity, but rather Jesus is the divine mind of God experiencing life as a human. Therefore, Jesus could learn, despite the fact that within the humanity of Jesus was this omniscient deity. Mm-hmm. And yet, in this sort of way that I can't even begin to explain, the deity of Jesus Christ is being blindfolded or limited by his humanity so that he can, in fact, experience life as a human. So the data about the rapture of the church and the data about the second coming was given to him, just not all the information. So, the Father, through the Holy Spirit, gave Jesus certain details, that we find here in our text that we're going to cover in this program. So there's lots of information that Jesus did receive, but then there was specific things that were withheld from him, specifically the day and the hour when all of these things will culminate, and therefore those who come along and start making predictions and start setting dates, it's foolish.
Did you grow up in the era of, I heard there were books that were like 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming in 1988.
I do. So, I came to Christ in the mid-'90s.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Hal Lindsey, I think, one of his books, The Late Great Planet Earth. And
okay, that title sounds
and there was another, that I do remember the book that you're talking about, 88 Reasons.
I think it started off in 87, and then it failed.
Yeah.
And then they followed it up with 88.
Come on with Harold Camping 2.
Yes.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I do know about those books, but not because I experienced them firsthand when they were first published. I was into punk rock and skateboarding at that point.
What did you care about when it's going to end?
I did not care about any of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, growing up, Christian, subculture, right? I mean, you had the what's the book series? Left Behind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then the movie.
Tim LaHaye, I think.
Tim LaHaye, yeah. I remember watching the movie and just kind of be like, oh man, you don't want to be left behind, right? So, and then the remake, is that Kirk Cameron? I think there was a remake.
I wasn't a fan, so I don't remember.
I haven't watched it. I just know I think Kirk Cameron's in it. So yeah, there. I guess people just for some reason kind of gloss over this verse, right? And by the way, the chapter we find ourselves in this episode is Matthew chapter 24, right. And this is where Jesus lets his disciples know, of the day or the hour, no one knows. But yet we still find ourselves in a place and time where people just find themselves okay with trying to set dates, just trying to find and calculations and trying to set a date. Maybe, I don't know, obviously we don't know the intentions of the people. Some could be bad intentions, but some could be genuinely trying to figure out, read the signs, read the stars, that kind of stuff. And maybe they want to spur their people around them into action. But
one of the things that I've heard is people make that okay, so we can't know the day or the hour, but what about the week? What about the month?
Sure.
and then with that, you do see Jesus challenging the religious leaders of his day because they didn't know the time in which they dwelt. Mm-hmm. So they had missed the day of their visitation, is the way that Jesus put it. And one of the reasons why he rebuked them for not realizing that this was the time of the first advent is because there are so many prophecies that actually pinpointed the period of time when the Messiah would arrive. You can see in Daniel chapter 9 a very specific, precise prophecy that begins with the going forth of a decree that was given by King Artaxerxes. And you can calculate a number of 7-year increments of time until the arrival of the Messiah, who would then be cut off, right? So, this is a very specific, numerical, calculable, if that's the right word to use. It's a very specific way to pinpoint when the Messiah would arrive during his first advent. And they completely missed it. And we're going to talk about this on Sunday, that, well, they were looking for a ruling, reigning king, not a suffering servant. And so a lot of these prophecies that pointed to the arrival of a suffering servant, they weren't really looking to those prophecies. And so they missed the day of their visitation because they just didn't really have a correct handle on both branches of messianic prophecies that we find in the Old Testament. The first branch being the prophecies that point to the suffering servant, the second branch of prophecies pointing to the ruling, reigning king coming and establishing his kingdom here on the earth. They wanted the second branch of prophecies. They didn't really care for the first. Yeah, so they missed it.
And you know what? Related to this, but on, so talking to a skeptic about these things, right? Because obviously, when as a Christian, you take everything, right? It's not just resurrection of Jesus, but then you discount prophecy. I mean, prophecy's in there, obviously. And then in this chapter, this is Jesus issuing these prophecies and these predictions. And what I'm trying to get at is, to the skeptic, I think we need to appeal that, because many skeptics will go as far to say about Jesus, great teacher, great moral teacher. I believe, I think it was Elon Musk that recently had an interview and asked about this, and he goes ahead and gives Jesus the compliments that he's due, right? The golden rule, I think we need to hold on to these aspects of Jesus. But why don't we take all of Jesus, right? Why is it that we always want to pick and choose? And what gives us the right to pick and choose what Jesus clearly wanted us to have, right? You either have all of him and all of his teachings, or just don't take any of it at all. So if you want to take the golden rule, treat others as you would be treated, then take the prophecy as well. And also take the teachings on hell. He's the one that spoke most about hell.
Yes.
But specifically here, we're talking about prophecy. To the skeptic, I would just, plead with you and say, consider what Jesus is saying here and ask yourself, is there truth to this? Is this what we actually see happening? And do we have good reason to trust in what Jesus is saying, right?
Is he a reliable source of information about the future?
Yeah.
So, when we consider self-proclaimed prophets like Nostradamus, is Nostradamus a reliable source of information?
If you were to work at CNN, probably. Nice. Got to get it in there.
Wow, you just went to reliable sources there, huh? Who is that? The Stelter?
Stelter, yes.
Yeah. I hear you using words. I'm not sure you know what they mean. The word reliable.
Fun times we live in.
But so, the question mark then is, is Jesus kind of like Nostradamus, who made a bunch of guesses that, I think his accuracy rate is about 50% or so.
And that's even generous when you give him the benefit of the doubt that the things he said are the things you would assume he was talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
So, is Jesus along those lines, or is Jesus an actual reliable source of information about what will transpire prior to the rapture of the church, followed by, his second coming? And so, in an attempt to put Jesus to the test, I would just appeal to the beginning of this chapter, Matthew chapter 24. And we learn here that Jesus went out and departed from the temple. And so he's there at the temple. That sets the stage there. And his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. So, they're analyzing the temple grounds and the various buildings that were there. And Jesus says to them, "Do you not see all these things?" So he's talking about the temple. "Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Then as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So the first question here is about, when will these things be? Speaking of the destruction of the temple. When is this going to take place? And so, now think about that for a moment, that, here is this Jewish Messiah sitting in Jerusalem talking to Jewish disciples, and he tells them, hey, this temple right here that you come to every year, this temple that you bring your sacrifices to, this temple where, the congregation of Israel comes to worship, this temple is going to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. Not one stone.
Yeah, it's like utter destruction.
Right. And what's interesting is that this was fulfilled to the T in 70 AD. Mm. So as we put this prophecy to the test, we see that, it was 70 AD, which, Jesus is there doing his ministry. He's in the middle of his earthly ministry, or actually getting closer to, the end of his earthly ministry, probably around, some speculate 33 AD. So this is probably about, early 33 AD when he's presenting this prophecy. And so within 30 years, this prophecy is fulfilled. Yeah. And this isn't like, they're gonna renovate the temple, or they're gonna add a new building, or there's gonna be an incredible worship service here, or some of these kinds of prophecies that aren't that impressive. No, this is a complete destruction of your temple. Yeah. Who could imagine this happening? And yet Jesus presents this prophecy, and within 30 years, this prophecy is fulfilled to the T. The Roman army actually surrounded Jerusalem on all sides and tried to bring the city to its knees by cutting off all commerce and supplies and starving the Jews. And when the Jews weren't about to give up, then Titus decides to invade the city on the 9th day of Av, which is August the 10th, 70 AD. Titus' army breaches Jerusalem's walls and is set to destroy the city. And then Josephus, a historian who was alive at this period of time, he tells us that these Romans put the Jews to flight and proceeded as far as the holy house itself, at which time one of the soldiers, without staying for any orders and without any concern or dread upon him at so great an undertaking, and being hurried on by a certain divine fury, snatched some out of the materials that were on fire, and being lifted up by another soldier, he set fire to a golden window through which there was a passage to the rooms that were round about the holy house on the north side of it. As the flames went upward, the Jews made a great clamor, such as so mighty an affliction required, and ran together to prevent it. And now they spared not their lives any longer, nor suffered anything to restrain their force, since the holy house was perishing. And then he says, thus it was the holy house burnt down. It was burnt to the ground. And then according to one historian, the flames engulfed the temple. Gold and silver and other precious metals stored in the temple melted and dripped in between the broken stones and cracked walls. The Roman soldiers then pried apart the stones with long bars to recover the treasure. The soldiers looted the temple treasury and all the furnishings and taken to Rome. In this way, Jesus' prediction in Matthew 24:2, that not one stone would be left upon another, came true. Mm. So they set the temple on fire. All the precious metals melt, drip into the cracks, and so they have to dismantle the temple stone by stone in order to retrieve all the valuables. Yeah, incredible. So this is a prophecy presented by Jesus sometime in the early 30s, and it comes to pass by 70 AD.
And it's documented, yeah.
And completely documented here by this Jewish historian. And that's just one of many prophecies that we can point to, that Jesus even predicted the way that he would die. Mm-hmm. Now, how many people would say that, so I'm going to die a martyr's death, and it's going to be in this very precise way of crucifixion, which is like the worst way that any criminal can die, because it's a slow, painful process of suffocation. So he predicts his death, and not only that, but then predicts his burial, and not only that, but then predicts his resurrection, which is then confirmed by all of his followers who ran away and hid on the night of his arrest, and then, within a little bit over a month's time, are going back out into the world preaching that they are eyewitnesses of his resurrection. So they not only confirm his death and his burial, which he predicted, but they're also confirming his physical resurrection from the grave, which they claim to be eyewitnesses of.
Yes.
So I would argue that Jesus is a very reliable source of information about the future.
Yeah, and you can't attack this line of reasoning by saying, well, that's just something found in the Bible or something. It's like, no, this is documented extra biblically.
Yep.
We have historians with such detail, right? And this is well known, the tension that was already bubbling between the Jewish people and then the Roman overlords at the time, right? It was bubbling, finally came to a head, and then this fight broke out, right? This is all well documented. It's well known. 70 A.D., the temple was razed to the ground.
Yep.
But Jesus did predict it, as well as his death, burial, and resurrection. So at this point, then, we have this historical person, Jesus, who had a following after his years of ministry as an itinerant preacher of sorts, right, as a rabbi. And he makes this prediction that does come true. So at this point, we can go ahead and say Jesus is a reliable source in terms of telling us about events that have yet to happen, okay? So then in this chapter, as he goes on to say now, he's going to mention many more things that will be occurring and giving us hints and signs as to what to watch out for about the last days. And so when we read this, we keep in mind knowing that we've already established Jesus is a reliable source,
right?
Okay? So why don't we go ahead and start looking at the rest of this Matthew chapter 24 and the rest of his statements, and we'll just kind of take it little by little, just pausing and commenting and seeing what we can establish here. So starting in verse 3, I'll go ahead and read the passage here, Matthew 24, verses 3 through 5. It says, "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?' And Jesus answered and said to them, 'Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many.'" So this seems to be his first point of argument, answering the disciples' question about when will these things be.
Right.
He doesn't give them like this year, this time, the day or the hour, but he says, look out for these things to be occurring. The first one he says, many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. Christ being, it's not his last name, right? But it's known, it's a title, being the anointed one or the Messiah. And that was his title. That's what he came to accomplish. He was the Savior of the world. So let's say Jesus lived around 2,000 years ago. So we've had 2,000 years to kind of see, have there been any other characters since his time saying, I am the Christ, coming in his name. I am, say, the second incarnation of Christ.
There's been a few.
Just a few, huh?
There's been a few. Just a few.
And they're all in Russia for some reason.
Well, you start drinking all that vodka, next thing you know, you think you're Jesus Christ.
Vodka and snow, not a good combo.
So there's been no shortage, for sure. I've actually got two lists here that can be pulled up in Wikipedia. I'll get to the second list of people who have claimed to be the Messiah, because this goes all the way back to Simon Bar Kokhba, who led a rebellion back in the 2nd century A.D. So you can go all the way back to ancient times to see that there's different people there, even in the area of Israel in the Middle East, claiming to be the Messiah,
coming with that title.
Yeah. Claiming to be the Messiah. So then you could just jump through time and just start listing names like John Nichols Thorne, which he was there in the 18th century, or Sun Myung Moon. That's one that a lot of people recognize that name. He was the founder of the Unification Church, established in Seoul, South Korea, and he considered himself to be the second coming of Christ. I'm thinking he just ate too much bulgogi. But
don't knock bulgogi.
I'm not. I love it. It's delicious.
Just don't take too much.
It makes you feel like you're a Messiah when you eat it.
I feel like I'm on cloud 9.
Yahweh ben Yahweh.
Hey, I mean, if you're born with that name, you gotta at least give it a chance.
A name so good you had to say it twice. A name so nice you had to say it twice.
Nice.
How about Jose Luis de Jesus?
Come on.
What?
It just writes itself.
I'm just saying. It just rolls right off the tongue. There's Alan John Miller, who he's just like, you hear his name and it's just kind of like, yeah, you're no Messiah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
You
tried. Give the old college try.
Yeah. So, but there's just this long list.
Very long list.
More recently, Jose Luis de Jesus Miranda.
Oh, okay.
Following in the tradition of
in the line of his forefathers.
Yes. Yep. David Icke. He was a New Age conspiracy theorist who came up with the idea of draconians.
Okay.
And claimed to be the son of God during an interview on Wogan back in 1991. There's no shortage of people who claim to be the Messiah or Jesus Christ himself, right? David Schuyler, who's still alive, he's a former MI5 agent and a whistleblower who in the summer of 2007 proclaimed himself to be the Messiah.
Yes.
So it's just like, wow, this guy had a position over in the UK.
All his cases are now
questionable.
Have to be reevaluated. Poor guy.
Yeah. So and then Todd Kincannon, who's former head of the South Carolina Republican Party,
here we go,
was arrested in 2018 for killing and mutilating his mother's dog. He claimed to the police that he was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and that God had told him to do it because every 1,000 years there needs to be a sacrifice and blood must be spilled. So
a little dog,
his mom's dog.
Okay.
Wow.
Little poodle, probably.
How about that?
Yeah, I remember seeing a documentary years ago about, I think it was some guy in Russia that he's just kind of like and they always have to look like Anglo Jesus, the long blonde hair. It's always like a white dude with blonde hair.
Jesus.
Yeah, Malibu Jesus. There you go. And flowy shirts, that kind of stuff, and just very mild mannered. And the teachings, I guess, are more like self-esteem motivational speeches, right? And they always appeal to people who feel out of place, and they always whatever cult they start, they always have to start a commune, and people just feel at home there and wanted and finally just loved on. And it always turns weird, it just turns into these weird, sex cults and stuff like this. This documentary was just showing this one dude and they gain followers. Somehow they always gain followers.
Always.
So there's always somebody out there who's vulnerable enough to, right place at the right time.
Right.
And you're going to gain some sort of followers and follow me out to the wilderness and we'll build a commune. It's like, oh man.
Here's your delicious Kool-Aid.
Yes. Let's all take it at the same time.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
And there's even, and Trump never claimed to be a Messiah, but there are a lot of people who believe that he is the Messiah.
Did we cover this on our Q episode?
We did, yeah. When we talked about
that was last year.
Q last year.
Yeah.
So there are those who even today hail him as the Messiah. I was watching, a video earlier today from I won't give the name, but basically just a Hollywood elite, who's basically assuring us that Trump is the only one who can fix America. like he's some sort of, Messiah character who, he is the one who has to turn everything around. And it's just like,
I just picture Trump's, I can't do it. I just picture the meme going like,
he couldn't do any worse right now.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so, two long lists of people that have claimed to come in his name and say, I am the Christ.
Right, and have deceived many.
When
Jesus said, take heed that no one deceives you, many will come in my name.
Yes. So, but this is just one sign. This is not. So again, appealing to the skeptic here.
Sure.
We're just getting started.
Right.
Right. So just keep this in mind. This is just the first in a list of many signs to come.
Yep.
So why don't we look at the next section here and see what other signs we should be looking out for. So starting here in verse 6, going through verse 7, Jesus went ahead and said, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom."
Yeah.
So we've gone from people claiming to be Messiah to straight out wars.
Right.
Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom.
Which, it's not uncommon to see people rise up and claim to be religious rulers or, messianic characters. And it's not uncommon to see, wars happening around the world. That's fairly commonplace. And yet, we certainly have, seen this coming to pass since the days of Jesus. Just one list here reminds us of the Trojan War and the first Messenian War, and the Greco-Persian wars and the Lamian War, the first Punic War, the second Punic War, third Punic War, Gallic Wars. So the Norman Conquest, Crusades, on and on and on. You can look at each century but what's interesting about this list that is found at Britannica, is that each century you find more wars.
Yeah.
You see increasing levels of wars each year, and the 20th century shaped up to be one of the bloodiest centuries.
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, it had more casualties than all the other wars before it combined.
Yeah. So, when we look back at the 20th century, just this running list, one war after another. There's the Boxer Rebellion, the Moro War, the Russo-Japanese War, the Pig War, the Mexican Revolution, the World War I, Baltic War of Liberation, Russian Civil War, the Russo-Polish War, the Rif War, the Chaco War, the Italo-Ethiopian War, the Spanish Civil War, the Sino-Japanese War, the Phony War, which was, I'm understanding, is that there was no hash.
Yeah.
There were no casualties because it was fake.
Nice.
But, World War II, the Greek Civil War, the Arab-Israeli Wars, the Korean War, the Algerian War, the Vietnam War, Six-Day War, War of Attrition, Yom Kippur War, the Dirty War, the Afghan War. It just, on and on and on it goes. And so, and then the 21st century, is certainly shaping up to, be another time of many wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah, so the rumors of wars, right? There's so much tension that exists between a lot of these obviously larger countries. You have Russia and play, you have China, obviously, and then the U.S. is always deciding whether or not to get involved in these conflicts going on overseas, right? I do want to just kind of maybe go off the path a little bit. Because I can hear already, again, just putting on my skeptic hat here and say, well, if it weren't for religion, we wouldn't have a lot of these wars, I'm sure, if I remember correctly, there's, these atheist internet sites that claim that the majority of wars that have ever been fought were for religious reasons, right? And if I don't have the source on readily at hand, but it's not the case that the majority of wars were for religious reasons. I think it winds up probably being about like 10%. And of course, the ones that people will point to would be like the Crusades,
right?
Which was more of a defensive war, trying to keep at bay the Muslim invasion at the time, right?
Right.
But then, again, you look at, number one, the amount of casualties taken, which you said, even just the 20th century just killed it by far, no pun intended. But you have millions and millions of people, but these were at the hands of atheistic rulers.
Well, certainly.
Right? And so it was their very worldview that drove them to eliminate scores and scores of people.
Yep.
Well, when you look at religious wars, obviously you have, think of the wars that happened in Ireland between Catholics and Protestants, right? There was that still goes on to this day. There's a lot of tension there.
Yep.
But so of course you're going to have people that are going to go to the war, but you also have to ask that really good question of, are they actually abiding by the teachings found in the Bible? Is this something that they should even be doing? And if not, then you really can't claim that, they're trying to do the will of God or something like that. So I think you just have to take all these things into context. But for the skeptic, I would say that no, you're wrong. Religion is not the main motivator for the majority of the wars that have gone on through history.
But even if we consider some of the wars that were started, or at least were defended by people who subscribe to a faith in Jesus Christ. Let's just take, for example, the Civil War here in America. So you have a bunch of Democrats who are really interested in protecting their right to own slaves. And then you have Christian abolitionists who come along and they want to end slavery here in America. And that ends up being a war, right? So, you could say that, well, these Christians, who started the Republican Party, were wanting to fight against their kinfolk here in America in order to rob them of the right to own slaves. Is that worth it?
It was a religious intention, yeah.
Is that a valid reason, for Christians to go to war against other Americans who are wanting to maintain a slave trade?
Yeah.
Was that a valid reason, or what we might call a just war?
Yeah, just war, yeah.
Right? So, I would assume that, we're all right now celebrating the Christian abolitionists who decided to take a stand legally. They went through, the constitutional, what the Constitution provides us with, which is, by new legislation through Congress and passing new laws and these sorts of things. And they, Abraham Lincoln rose up and set the slaves free, Emancipation Proclamation, and then the Southern states decided no. The Southern Democrats decided that they are going to fight for their right to own slaves. And so the Civil War began, and the people in the North, and specifically the Christian abolitionists, said, okay, then we're going to go to war. And Abraham Lincoln even went as far as saying that as many, I forget the direct quote, but he was basically saying that if the Southern military comes along and kills one of ours, then we're going to kill X amount of theirs, and it'll be it's going to cost them, in other words, right? And so could we come along and point at all of that, the Civil War, and just say that, well, that's just Christians being real jerks, and wanting to shed blood in the name of Jesus Christ.
There's religion again, yeah.
Or do we say that was a just battle, and we praise the Lord that as a result, slavery ended here in America, and set that precedent for many other areas of the world. And so then I could make the same argument for many other wars in which Christians were involved. So what I could change the statement to is this: that, well, many religions, the religion is the cause for many wars. Okay, so therefore religion is bad, because if that's the argument, then I could also say that most wars were fought for freedom. Is freedom now bad?
Yeah.
Because it's the same argument. So if we're going to say that, well, freedom isn't it's not a just cause for war, so then every time somebody raises up to enslave us, we just have to put up with it because there's not a good enough reason to have a just war.
Yeah.
I don't think most people would agree with that.
Yeah, I know there is a debate, of course, between like pacifists and people who are willing to take up arms for certain causes. I know that. But yeah, for sure, I definitely see the reasoning you're getting at about turning it on its head and telling the skeptic, well, you have to go deeper and see what is the reasoning. Was there a just cause? And did these people actually fight for a righteous cause? And so, yeah, you can't just say, well, war in general. Obviously, yes, war is hell, as it's been said. You don't want to go to war and don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
But then there are some cases, there are some grievances that will motivate people to take up arms and defend whatever cause they're fighting
I would
for.
never take one of my guns and break into my neighbor's house and try to just take whatever I want from my neighbor. Like, I would never do that. There would never be a moment that would even cross my mind to engage in that activity. If my neighbor breaks into my house and tries to take stuff from me, I'm going to defend my home. Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of situation where you could say that, well, how dare he defend himself? It's like, well, this is my house, and I've got that right, and I'm going to take advantage of it, right? And in a larger context, if some nation wants to come over here and enslave America, and we decide to go to war over that, that's a just war. You're not going to come over here and enslave us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this is, the just war theory is like centuries old. This is stuff that's been debated for centuries, literally, and they've come across like a set of criteria that, so you don't want to be jumping into war as first, your first thing to do. You have patience and you see, okay, it's more of a last resort.
Is there a peaceful solution?
There you go.
And if there is, let's go with the peaceful solution. Yeah.
Very good. Well,
but what we do see, though, is, as Jesus said, that we're going to continue to see wars and rumors of wars increasing over time. And we're certainly seeing that even ramping up here in this 21st century. Recently we're watching, Russia surrounding Ukraine. And it's very interesting to see how this all shakes out. Yeah. Because if our president sits back and just allows this all to go down, well, then how long before China says, well, we're going to go take Taiwan then?
Yes.
And how long before Iran says, well, we're gonna go ahead and wipe Israel off the face of the map, which is what we've been planning on doing for quite some time. I mean, they're already engaging in these proxy wars. Yeah. Iran's already, fueling the fires of Hezbollah and Hamas and the
monetary funds and weapons. Yep. And yeah.
So, at what point in time does Iran ramp up their nuclear game and decide to start, attacking Israel in a full-scale war?
Yeah.
So you already have just a quick snapshot of what's happening in the world even today. You've got Russia and Ukraine, then you've got the question about Kazakhstan, and will Russia just go ahead and just grab a hold of what's happening there in Kazakhstan as well? Will China go and grab Taiwan? Will Iran attack Israel? I mean, this is after Biden botched our withdrawal from Afghanistan. So
yeah, and it's interesting to see how every now and then you hear in the news about, for whatever reason, these nations will sometimes just kind of put a little bit of a show of force. They'll encroach in somebody's airspace or ocean space. They'll say it was kind of a practice that they're letting off rockets. They're just testing these war missiles, right? Kind of playing war games almost.
I had no idea it was going to do that.
Yeah, but it's just kind of just to show, what a lot of people believe, right? It's just kind of a show of force. They say, hey, we're upping our game. We're preparing, and we're here, basically. So if you're thinking of doing something what we think you're going to do, don't. Yeah. And so you kind of always have this kind of a bullying tactic between our nation and China and Russia. Those always been those three. Sometimes you see North Korea get in there, and they become a player later on in other prophecies, right? And so, yeah, every now and then it's just important to. So I can tell you just personally, right? Growing up, never having an interest in what's going on globally in news, what's going on. But now it's much more important that we kind of just become a generalist, just become generally aware of what is going on in the world around us. Recently, so I follow basketball, right? Recently, there was an executive for an NBA team, the Golden State Warriors, and he kind of dismissed the whole issue about the Uyghur Muslims there in China being held in internment camps. And he says, nobody really cares what's going on. Now, a lot of people didn't even know what was going on, but now they're going to find out.
He said it was below his line of caring about stuff or something. It's just like, really?
Yes.
I can understand if what you mean by that is that, I've got so many things on my plate here in America that I don't really have time to look into that. So if that's what you mean, I get that.
Yeah.
But the way he said it was just kind of like, I could really care less, about these people who are being persecuted.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you hear the stories of what they're actually doing. I mean, it's basically
vicious.
It's basically what was going on in World War I to the Uyghur Muslims, right? What's interesting, just kind of an aside, there's an NBA player. His name used to be Enes Kanter. He's from Turkey, and he recently became an official U.S. citizen. Changed his name to his last name to Freedom, which is pretty awesome. But he's very outspoken about what's basically the positions that the NBA takes, because they're heavily involved in China. They make a lot of inroads and do a lot of kind of like outreaches, right? Just kind of community outreaches there in China. But they never dare speak up against the human rights violations going on there. So it's all interesting. Like, all these things are very much interconnected, right? So even as a person who's just growing up, I love basketball, but now you see these political maneuvers just happening at the very top levels of these institutions and organizations. And you just have to be aware of what is going on around us. We can't just be tunnel vision of like, okay, I'm going to stay in my lane, I'm not going to talk, or I'm not going to even bother to know what's going on. But here Jesus is telling us we have to be aware of these things.
Yeah.
Wars and rumors of wars.
And what's interesting is that when you get into the Greek on this, he actually says that an ethnos will rise up against ethnos, or ethnicity will rise up against ethnicity. Mm-hmm. And so there's a racial component happening here where, we might expect to see more extreme levels of racism, happening throughout the world, as ethnic people rise up against ethnic people, right? Or ethnos against ethnos.
So we always see the ever-present tension between, what is called Palestine and Israel.
Yep.
And is it not in the constitution, as it were, of Palestine that they want to wipe Israel out there for by virtue of just being an Israeli, by being Jewish?
Yep.
It is their duty to wipe them off the earth.
Yep.
And they make no bones about it. It's there for everybody to see.
Same thing that China does not recognize Taiwan as an independent country, and I mean, we could just start going down the list of areas where ethnic hatred between two groups is still very strong, and then those fires are being stoked here in America, with CRT, critical race theory, and just painting white people as devils, who only want to colonize and these sorts of things, and the increasing hatred for white Americans, as fueled by the CNN talking heads who keep stoking this fire. Even the guy, the terrorist basically, who went and took hostages at the synagogue there in North Texas this past week. CNN described him as being factually Arabic but morally white.
Is that really what the phrase they used?
I mean, that's what my goodness. That's what I saw.
Factually Arabic.
Factually Arabic.
Okay.
But morally white.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. No. There was, and there was a lot of hubbub about how even the FBI spokesperson who had to make a comment about what the motivations of this person was. Right. And they went out of their way to say, no, it wasn't about targeting Jewish people, but we're still trying to find out the motivation. Yeah. It's like, well, he went into a synagogue.
How about that?
Yes. And he's what we call radical Muslim, right? Yeah. He's been radicalized. Yeah. He just came from a predominantly Muslim country.
Can't do the math on this one.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we're going to get into more of that a little bit later in this chapter. But rumors of wars and wars definitely happening, but even all the more so, especially is, like you said, 20th century saw it was a brutal century to live in terms of wars. But now it's almost like everybody's on pins and needles. If all it takes is that one gunshot fired in the dark, and it might stoke another world war here. So we got to keep in mind, we got to be alert. So why don't we let me pause here and let me just address our audience. So audience, thank you again for tuning in to Studio 118. You might be tuning in on YouTube. If so, thank you. Again, subscribe, hit that like button, share the link to this live stream on your social media platforms. We'd love to engage with other people. And we also have that live chat going. So if you're on that live chat, go drop in there, say hello. But more importantly, send in your questions. We have a Q&A portion after every one of our discussions towards the end of our episodes. And we'd love to hear from you. We answer these questions live here in studio. And send in your questions there. We'll queue them up there on the live chat. Also, if you're watching on Austin Cable Access Channel 11, you can submit your question via phone. You can call in at 512-576-5433. So we'd love to hear from you. We're talking about living in the last days. We're going through Matthew chapter 24. And we're just making our way and seeing exactly what we've already established. Jesus is a reliable source. And we're now going through what are the signs that he is pointing us to be aware of about when these last days will come to an end. So we find here ourselves in Matthew chapter 24. We're going to start in verse 7. And Jesus goes on to say, "And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." All right. So a lot to unpack there.
Oh,
just in few words, but
and one of the things that I just wanted to point out really quick here is that he now is kind of encapsulating all the things that we've looked at now, and we're about to look at these famines, pestilences, and earthquakes, or natural disasters, to sum it up. But so these natural disasters are then encapsulated together with the wars and the rumors of wars and the deceptive people, the false teachers who come along pretending to be Christ, right? So all these things, verse 8, are the beginning of sorrows.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's in reference to, hey, when are these things going to take place? When is the temple going to be destroyed? What's going to be the sign of your coming? What's going to be the end of the age, right? Those are the questions.
Yeah.
And all of these things are the beginning of sorrows. Mm-hmm. So from the destruction of the temple, until the end of the age, we should see these things continuing to ramp up, right? Yeah. So with that, looking at famines, of course, we're starting to watch some major issues going on. I mean, we're right now, America is in a major drought. Specifically, the western area of our country has been in a major drought for quite some time now, mm-hmm. and it is threatening, the food supply, here in our country. So, it'd be real easy to see, America ending up in a famine situation within no time.
Yeah. Isn't that something that we just take it for granted, right? You never even think there could be so many other things that would destroy America, a very strong nation, right, and has been for a couple centuries now. But then something like famine, just food supply.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we see God using with Israel oftentimes, is when they're given over to idolatry, and when they're, given over to, sexual immorality and these sorts of things. God oftentimes would use famine in order to open their eyes and bring them to a place of repentance, right? But it is interesting that China is now hoarding grain, right? So that's just an interesting bit of news, right? There's an article that speculates one of the reasons for China's food stockpile is to offset food uncertainties due to factors such as its deteriorating relations with the U.S. and Australia, which could drastically alter the import environment. But yeah, so according to one report, China's hoarding massive amounts of grain. And in an article titled "China Hoards Over Half the World's Grain, Pushing Up Global Prices," they point out that China, which has only 20% of the world's population, is expected to have 69% of the globe's maize reserves in the first half of crop year 2022, 60% of its rice and 51% of its wheat.
Wow.
So they're stockpiling food right now. And I saw this coming down at the end of last year, while simultaneously watching, there be a strain on our supply chain.
Yes.
And that now, just the other day, I was grocery shopping, and there's some shortages.
Yeah.
There's some areas of the supermarket now that, where you can see where they have moved food around. Mm-hmm. So that things that are, it's like they've got a huge, section for eggs, right? But now they're also selling eggs over here where there's this product that's no longer available.
Yeah.
So you can just kind of see where they're adjusting, their shelving so that it doesn't look like there's a shortage.
Yes.
But in reality, it's just kind of like you've never put eggs over here. You've never put that product over. But pretty much all the sausage and bacon was gone the other day. I was just kind of like...
Was it in your cart?
It's in my belly. But yeah, so, I was, grabbing our groceries for the week and went over to get my my Whataburger breakfast sausage.
Nice.
There were 2 left.
And you had to fight for them?
And no, nobody wants to fight me. But
you take it, sir.
Take the sausage, please. But yeah, I mean, like there was just a little bit of bacon left, and there was very little sausage left.
Wow,
it was interesting.
Like, what are the eggs doing where the TP used to?
Yeah, I mean, but they had moved a bunch of the eggs, so there were still plenty of eggs down past dairy.
Yeah.
But they also had this whole shelving of eggs over near the bacon.
Yeah.
Just to kind of fill out the
nothing to see here.
Space. Yeah. So you're, the supply chain issue I thought was going to be a lot worse a lot sooner.
Yeah.
But you are seeing
it's becoming more sustained.
Yeah. And go try to get some Dayquil right now.
Yes.
It's pretty much non-existent.
Yeah, pretty much everything has gone up in price, right? I mean,
everything's more expensive, yeah.
Fuel, basically just all the necessities that we need to just live.
It's almost like, if your government spends trillions and trillions of dollars to tell people to stay home, that it ends up costing more in the long run, I guess.
It puts a strain on certain things. Yeah, I think they call them unintended consequences, or not. Yes,
but yeah. So regardless of whether we're looking at why is China hoarding food, or how are we going to get out of this drought, and if we can't get out of this drought, how is that going to affect our food supply here in America? It's not looking good. Mm-hmm. It's not looking good. So, when you see Jesus saying, hey, you're going to see wars, rumors of wars, you're going to see, false teachers more and more. And famines. Well, wow.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing issues with supply chain and governments hoarding food and whatnot. It's like, what do they know that we don't know?
Yeah.
And why don't we know it if Jesus said it?
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, what are we to do, right? And not just in terms of being aware, but now comes the time to encourage people around us to, what's this, is there a proverb about an ant?
Go to the ant, sluggard.
Ant, yeah.
Consider her ways.
But yeah, like it's again, we take a lot of these things for granted, but the more understanding we have, the more we can be prepared, so it won't just kind of hit us like a slap in the face, like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
And I'm certainly not suggesting that we all become like overboard preppers who, dig a hole in the backyard and
Too late.
So
We're coming to you underground.
I'm not the extreme prepper who has a bunker out back, but I do have a plan, and I do have a supply of food, and I do have, an ability to protect my home. And, I'm certainly not suggesting that you become a full-blown prepper, but you should be prepared.
Yeah.
And there is some distance between those 2 points of just having basic necessities that might last you for a month, versus having, a bunker out back that can supply you for 5 years. It's like, there's probably a balance, between these 2 points that makes sense for intelligent people.
Yes. Will you split some of your Whataburger sausage with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
You heard it, people. So, we have also not only famines, but pestilences and earthquakes.
So pestilence, I mean, what are we talking about? Pandemics.
Yes.
We're talking about disease and plagues and these sorts of things, right? Well, I mean, are we seeing an increase of pestilence?
Could be. I'm seeing an increase of variances.
Omicron says what?
Variants of pestilences.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is, Bill Gates has been warning about plagues for quite some time now.
Are we still listening to this guy?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
You must have been disgruntled with your Windows operating system.
I've never had a Windows operating system.
Look at the picture. He's saying it's not me.
Hey,
it wasn't me.
I didn't do it.
I only had dinner with Epstein. That's about it.
Wow. Yes. Okay.
Holding no punches. There we go.
So you have Gates warned in 2015 that the biggest potential killer the world could ever face was not war but a pandemic. That's back in 2015.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, this is about the same period of time when we started doing all of our gain of function research over in China.
A lot of funding going on over there. That's right.
And interestingly, this is about the same point in time that China started warning the world about bioweapons that are, some being created over there in China or something like that.
Let him who has ears hear.
Yeah, a lot of interesting coinky dinks going on.
Yes.
But
this is the same guy that was trying to push not meat on us. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
A couple years ago.
Crickets or something.
Yeah.
I guess.
Or no, just the synthetic meat or whatever.
Right,
it made its way to Burger King for a little bit.
Right. What is it called? It's I forget. Not miracle meat.
It was plant-based meat, but I forget what it was called.
Yeah. They had some kooky name for it.
Yeah.
But, got to protect the world from the cow.
Yes. I remember the meme. There was a little bit of a period there where was it last year or the year before, because you had the invasion of locusts, and basically everybody had a recipe now for protein-packed meals with locusts. And people were like, "Stop trying to get me to eat locusts. It's not going to happen."
The book is How to Cook Locusts, How to Cook 4 Locusts, How to Cook 40 Locusts.
Yes. Crazy.
Oh yeah. So Bill Gates is still warning us about Omicron and the variants and then stuff beyond. That there are potential plagues and pandemics that are even scarier than COVID.
Yeah, and this is something that this whole debacle, right? This coronavirus unleashed upon the world has kind of opened the eyes of a lot of people, including myself, about this stuff exists. Like, there's labs doing research on these very things, and whether it's malintent or just an oopsie accident, right, and it got out of hand very quickly. The point is, it can happen again just as easily.
Right.
And so, at the very least, we need to be aware of it. That's all I'm pointing to. At the very least, we just need to be aware of it. And how does that orient as to how do we live our life now?
Yep.
At the same, on the same side of that token, we talk about you mentioned bioweapons.
Yeah.
again, just opens our eyes that these things are in active research and design phase.
Yep.
There's weapons being built for the express purpose of killing or harming many people at a time.
It was last November when the FBI and the CDC began investigating questionable vials labeled smallpox, which were found at a Merck lab near Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Why does this lab have vials of smallpox sitting around?
Yes.
Seems like something that you would want under lock and key.
Yes. Yeah.
So, are they gearing up to release smallpox? Yeah. Are they gearing up is somebody doing this? Are they trying to protect us from it? Or
yeah. So that's kind of the point, right? Is that we can speculate, and that's all it is, right?
That's all it is.
Which is fine. It's speculation. But the question there is, yes, the question has to be asked. What in the world? How are these things just being treated so carelessly?
Right.
And that's where I'm saying, again, something like this could very easily happen once more.
Yeah.
And so let's not kid ourselves and think that, well, the people up top or very important scientists and researchers, they know what they're doing. Look, man, they're human just like you and me.
Yeah.
Look, we're all going to make stupid mistakes, but some of them lead to worldwide pandemics.
Yep. And why are we allowing this guy who truly believes that the risk is worth it to engage in gain of function while turning around and saying that he never engaged in gain of function? Mm-hmm. He admits that he agrees that there's benefits. There's benefits that are greater than the risk of engaging in these gain of function experiments, while then turning around saying, but we never did.
Yeah.
Well, hold on a second. So, weren't you the same guy back in 2019, right before COVID started, that you said that you were hoping to be able to deal with some novel, pandemic, because that would, just kind of be like the crowning achievement of your, your legacy.
Yeah.
Like that was something that he said in 2019, right before.
He spoke a little too soon. Yeah, too much.
Or revealed too much of his hand, But Fauci came right out in 2019 during an interview, and in talking about his legacy and everything that he has achieved, that he was asked basically, what else would you like to accomplish? Well, I'd like to deal with some novel, so it's like, well, really, that's
ergo it happened.
But then there are some who are arguing that this COVID virus is actually a bioweapon, mm-hmm. and was not just misplaced or it accidentally escaped, but it was actually unleashed.
Yeah.
Now I can't speak to that. I don't have the evidence to be able to make that statement, but it certainly does seem like we're starting to hear more and more about bioweapons, mm-hmm. which can be used to target specific DNA. Yeah. Or at least let's just say that some people are more prone towards certain diseases, and that can be targeted with these sorts of bioweapons. Yeah. So you can actually engage in almost a race war, mm-hmm. Just by tweaking your bioweapon in such a way that when it attacks, when it spreads through a community, that it affects certain people more so than others.
Yeah, we know a great deal about the genetic makeup and what certain codons do and how to affect a genetic mutations and whatnot, right?
Yep.
And so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But again, that's just in the day and age that we live in, where we have people who obviously want to have the upper hand during wartime. There's active research going on. Let's not kid ourselves. There are bioweapons being developed and researched on. specifically targeting, okay, how can we affect mass casualty, right? Basically, how can we bring our enemies to their knees very, very quickly? But again, like I said, the world being as it is, things can quickly just get out of hand, and it winds up affecting the world at large, just like what we've seen with COVID-19.
That's right.
So yeah, we have pestilences, but then Jesus also mentions earthquakes as well.
Yeah, and we're certainly seeing more and more of that. According to the insurancejournal.com, the number of noticeable earthquakes has been increasing year after year since 2017 in the key oil-producing regions of the U.S., according to an analysis by an independent energy research firm. So this includes earthquakes that are happening. We're seeing this data coming from Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and New Mexico. Where a lot of oil is being pulled up out of the ground and replaced with salt water and these sorts of things. You're starting to see more and more earthquakes taking place in these areas. Pretty interesting.
And if you consider, what exactly is an earthquake but plate tectonics shifting?
Right.
And there are obviously well-known fault lines throughout the globe. And so you see, once these plates start moving, there's always been this talk for like decades, right, about the big one coming. The one to start just kind of a ripple effect. But I guess there's a little bit of truth to that in the sense that there probably are some areas of these well-known fault lines that are just kind of on the very edge of, if those things move, it's going to start something, right? And so that's again just something to be aware of. Once you start hearing, oh, there's earthquakes in this area and earthquakes in this area, some of them may be small, some of them may be a little bit larger, like 4.0 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, once those plates move, it's probably likely that bigger plates in a little bit down the further line of the fault line can, once they move, they're going to be bigger.
Shift, Alt, Delete.
Yes.
Also, so this is according to Israel365news.com. This report says that the number of earthquakes is increasing. In the first 65 days of 1921, exactly 1 century ago, only 7 major earthquakes, magnitude 6 or higher, were recorded globally, according to the USGS database. In the same period last year, a total of 24 major earthquakes, magnitude 6 or higher, were recorded around the globe. And back in 2019, just 20 major earthquakes have been reported to March the 6th, just 50% of this year's total. In 2018, a total of 24 major quakes were reported in the first 65 days of the year, and in 2017, just 15. So 24 major earthquakes were recorded at the beginning of 2016, and in 2015, just 18. So we're seeing, when they're taking the same period of time and analyzing how many earthquakes, that we're seeing, at a certain magnitude, pop. We're definitely seeing an increasing amount of these earthquakes.
Yeah, and I think, thankfully we live in a day and age where, because you have more and more nations that are kind of coming out of poverty and stuff like that, they're able to withstand the effects of the earthquake. So it's kind of like almost you don't feel it quite as much as you used to, because think of an earthquake that starts out in the middle of an ocean, creates a tsunami, and then wipes out. That still happens today, but it happens less and less. But what you're saying is that the frequency of the earthquakes seems to be increasing little by little. But you're still going to have these, obviously, nations that are still kind of sitting on poverty level. They're going to be easily wiped out if there's a tsunami that hits them, or even an earthquake that hits them directly. But again, if that big one hits, or several big ones hit, nobody's safe there.
Yep.
So the frequency is very interesting to note.
And then you've got the volcano that just went off.
Yes, creating an island off of Tonga.
Yep.
Yes. Underground volcanoes. So we've had coronavirus. We also had, remember the murder hornets for a little bit there? And now we got underground volcanoes.
That's
the
right.
Earth is trying to kill us.
That's right.
The Earth does not like what we're doing for some reason.
And then there was the eruption the other day there in the area of Hawaii, the Kilauea, I believe is maybe
I don't understand Hawaiian.
Yeah.
No.
So, I think they eat poi and then name stuff.
Yeah. They don't have enough vowels, I think. I don't know how it goes. They have a smaller alphabet. That's all I heard.
So, and then, if you go to raptureready.com, they've got a page on volcanoes that go all the way back to 122 BC. Mount Etna happened in 122 BC. And then they just kind of list the known volcanic eruptions, since then, including, Pompeii in 79 AD and all the way down. You just continue to see these happening more and more. Volcanic eruptions happening around the world.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that he would include natural disasters.
Right.
I think that's just something that just strikes me as curious, that you would think that he would concentrate solely on what people are doing to kind of usher in the end of the age. But somehow just the natural course of events is tied into this. It's very interesting.
And well, I think that there's a good reason for that. It kind of ties to, first of all, one of the points of the restoration of all things is a restoration of the creation itself, right?
Is this Paul where he said the earth is now groaning?
That's right.
Or creation is groaning?
Let me pull this up real quick. I wasn't prepared with this one. Nope.
Romans somewhere?
Yeah, it's in the book of Romans.
8, I want to say.
Let's see if I can't locate this. But yeah, Paul in Romans 8 says that I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us, for the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. So, so in there, you see Paul referring to the way that the creation itself was cursed, along with mankind when Adam and Eve there sinned in the garden. You see not only mankind being cursed with original sin, but all of creation being cursed, which is why, as a young earther, I believe that there's no death prior to the fall.
Yeah.
Which places all dead and buried critters that you find in the geologic column and in the fossil record. All that has to happen after the fall of Adam and Eve, just by nature of the curse, which affects the entirety of creation. So here, though, Paul is talking about how there's coming a day when there's going to be a refurbishing, when Peter talks about the elements melting with fervent heat, and in that, the entirety of creation is then restored to what God originally intended prior to the fall of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's true. I'm reminded of when God had punished the Israelites for violating the Sabbath for so long, and he put them in captivity in Babylon for, was it 400 years? Or, well, how long?
So it was 70 years.
70 years.
And that was 1 year for every Sabbath year they missed.
That's what it was. Yeah,
So it's 490 years of Sabbaths.
Yeah.
Shemitah, the Sabbath year rest, when you let the land rest for a year, right? So they would have 6 years of work, and then on the 7th year, the Shemitah year, they would allow the land to rest, and they missed that over the course of 490 years, which was equivalent to 70 Shemitahs.
Yeah. 77.
And so they had to go and stay in captivity to let the land rest for those 70 years. Yeah.
Was there also, if I remember correctly, the reference of when God was going to then use the Israelites to judge the pagan nations, but there was the way he phrased it, was it about the land growing tired of what the pagan nations were doing with the land?
Right, yeah.
The idolatry and the sacrifices.
Blood guilt.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the blood guilt of the land, and even today, I believe that the blood of every aborted baby is crying out from the earth, as a testimony against our own society, which, our comeuppance will not be pretty.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very good to know. Well, yeah, let's move on. Let's make our way further here in Matthew chapter 24. Here in verse 9, Jesus goes on to say, "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake." So he's talking to his disciples, and he's telling them, they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. So a form of religious persecution, basically, for being a follower of Christ here. And do we see this? Obviously, we've seen this all throughout history for sure.
Most certainly. Now we've been very fortunate here in America, by nature of, who founded, the government of this country and the religious freedom that we have by way of our unalienable rights. And, here in America, we've been blessed, for quite some time now with our First Amendment rights, which,
it's being tested.
We'll see how long.
Every now and then, but yes, it feels like it's being tested.
It's very, very much being
frequently,
tested. Yes. But as far as the church being persecuted, I mean, there's many areas of the world right now where Christians are being persecuted.
Oh yeah.
You see one report coming from prophecynewswatch.com where Afghanistan now is the most dangerous country for Christians.
Yeah.
And then you have, that whole 1040 window, where it's not uncommon to find Christians being persecuted and martyred for their faith in Christ, even today.
Yeah.
So, persecution, the church is not, foreign to persecution in many areas of the world. And, it's looking like it's starting to come this way here in our own country. But closer to home, we just watched Canada criminalize so-called conversion therapy. Mm-hmm. So that if a Christian in Canada encourages, someone who has been living, say a homosexual lifestyle or a transgender lifestyle, and encourages them, to repent and to, allow the Lord to transform their life, that pastor or that Christian can be arrested, can be tried, so this has been criminalized there in Canada, and chances are it won't be long before that makes its way here to America.
Yeah.
So, and with that, you better believe that there's going to be increasing levels of persecution as more and more people, begin to take a public stand against what they perceive to be hate speech.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I've never traveled abroad, but always hear the stories of how it's more difficult to essentially live your life as you should as a Christ follower. I know there's always this conception of you need to compartmentalize your spiritual life and values and beliefs, and then your just regular personal way of living. Compartmentalize those, so when you go out in public, you live one way and you present yourself one way, but keep your religion at home. Keep it within the walls of the church. But that's not so. Here in America, like you said, we're so fortunate where we can live the true way that Christ has transformed us from within. So the life that I now live is Christ in me. But when you go abroad, it's much more difficult to do that. So that
certainly.
You feel the pressure not only through whether it's like political pressure or just societal or even just physical harm being done upon you.
No, I've been to a few different places in the world where, we had to sneak Bibles in somewhere, or we had to be real careful about how we talked to those people. I've stood in a kibbutz, witnessing with foreigners who if that conversation were heard by authoritarians, that I could be arrested and either kicked out of the country or prosecuted. So I remember being pulled off of a train going into one area where I was leading a small group, and we were taking Bibles in where they weren't allowed, and I got pulled off the train by an authoritarian and taken into literally a little dark room with a light that was shining in my face as I was being asked in broken English, what am I doing? And they had all of our passports, and yes. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to jail, I'm about to get persecuted.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very real. Wow. Going through those experiences where it's just like, I'm talking to this group of Muslims over here, about Jesus Christ, and if this conversation gets a little heated, that I could easily find myself being cast into a prison cell.
Yeah.
So that's a reality, and we take it for granted here in America, and then a lot of Christians are scared of persecution here in America.
Yeah,
and it's like there isn't any yet, but the longer we choose to live in fear of perceived persecution here in America, the more we're setting the stage for actual persecution, because if you're not outspoken today, and you allow those who are outspoken, who despise Christianity and hate Christians, if you give them the upper hand, well then how long is it going to be before you lose your liberty here in the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Yeah, is it Hebrews 10 where it says, let us not forsake the assembling of each other, but we should be gathering all the more as we see the day approaching?
Oh,
is that right?
Hebrews 10.
So we should, at the very least, be gathering amongst ourselves, fellowshipping, and gathering with the church body.
Just as Paul said.
Yeah. Ooh, you're not going to get slipped that one by me.
Yeah,
only God knows.
So then, one of the things that came on my radar recently is there's a tiny administrative agency in the District of Columbia that it's known as the Pretrial Services Agency for the District of Columbia. It's a federal independent entity that assists officers in the District of Columbia courts. They are right now beginning to compile a list of federal workers who have filed for religious exemption to the vaccine.
Is this a pre-crime unit you're talking about?
Pre-crime, that's right.
Okay, my bad.
It kind of is, not in the Minority Report sort of way.
Yeah.
They don't have, precogs in a tub, that they're trying to, find out the future about. But it is Pretrial Service Agency.
Yeah.
So in other words, these are people who are providing, their lawyers with pretrial information.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you need pretrial information for people who have filed for religious exemptions unless you're planning to possibly prosecute people if you somehow expose them as not being religiously affiliated but claiming it?
Yeah.
Like that's what I imagine, is that they're starting to investigate the people who have claimed religious exemption, and it's like maybe they're going to start analyzing their lives to see, are these people really religious, and if not, then are they planning to put them on trial or something?
Yeah, I remember in the Obama administration where the IRS was used.
Oh yeah.
They
weaponized the IRS.
Yeah, to make it harder for a person to claim 501c3 status. If you were like a religious organization, they were targeting you. Minor, right?
Right.
Comparison, relatively speaking, right? But
they're not locking you up and throwing away the key.
Yeah. But like for a lot of these things, right, it's setting the stage, giving people ideas of like, oh, okay, well, let's see how far we can take these kinds of
ideas. They targeted Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah.
After his
documentary
on Obama.
Yeah.
of a sudden he was thrown into jail for something that many Americans have been guilty of, giving too much money to the politician of their choice. But but the reality is, though, is that we're going to start seeing more and more persecution against the church. The cross is even at this point in time considered by some as a symbol of hate. The cross is treated as a symbol of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look back to the KKK and you see they were burning crosses and that sort of thing. And so even some of their little bedsheet costumes, would incorporate crosses in their emblems and that sort of thing. So then, these people who are wanting to accuse every, cis white male of being a white supremacist, will say, oh, cross, you got a cross. That's a KKK symbol. It's like, well, no, I'm not a Democrat, so I don't belong to the KKK.
Well, that's a good segue into our next verse here.
Yeah.
Verse 10, Matthew chapter 24. Jesus continues, and then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another.
Right.
So this comes after natural disasters, but now we have just a growth, an increase in hatred and being offended.
People who are easily offended is one of the is one of Jesus' predictions.
An increase of it, yes.
How about that?
Yes.
I mean, what an obscure prophecy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. There's going to be deceptive, teachers claiming to be the Messiah. There's going to be these natural disasters. Oh, and also, people are going to be easily offended.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted that? And yet here we are.
Yeah.
In this day and age where, comedy is dead, because comedians aren't allowed to offend anybody anymore.
Or they self-censor themselves.
Well, of course, that's part of it. It's like they don't want to end up like Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
So they've got to, self-censor and try to hide every, off-color joke that they told, 20 years ago.
Or, I think part of it also is that they believe that because it's basically social justice, right? They believe that cause it's much larger than, them telling jokes. So they'd rather die on that hill.
Yep. But, here we are, in this day and age when many are offended. And then it says, and will betray one another and will hate one another.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yes. So I've definitely can attest, just firsthand on how take this, again, coronavirus pandemic and how it's turning people against one another. And not only that, but you have, it's this weird phenomenon where you have media hammering this fear-based message, this narrative that's just keeping you in constant fear mode. Politicians who don't want to let off and let the people rule themselves, and they're always keeping these people and basically turning people against one another. You had President Biden recently over the holidays telling us that this, number one, it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Right. Get ready, unvaccinated people. You're going to have a winter of death, basically. And so a lot of this type of language is being used to turn one group of people that made one health decision against another group of people who made a different health decision.
Right.
And people buy into it and they turn on one another.
Right.
And they're looking for opportunities to other them, and become offended when they hear, oh, you're part of that group. And we see definitely an increase in the past 2 years. So. Yep.
It's amazing to me, and then to see people narking out other people, for not wearing a mask or for not abiding by all of the latest COVID stand rules, and it's just it's amazing to see how quickly Americans turned on one another, how quickly family members were shunned from the holiday celebration. How quick? Oh, you're not vaccinated? Well, you can't come to our Christmas party. Yeah, but I already have antibodies. I already survived COVID. So my antibodies are better than your vaccine. Nope, don't want you here. I'd rather have someone infected with COVID with a breakthrough infection if they're vaccinated than someone who survived COVID and has antibodies and is not infected. It's like, really? That's the decision process right now? Like, what is that based on, even the mask situation, it's like, I saw a video of a guy the other day just ranting to his camera. Like, he went out of the restaurant, sat in his car, ranting about the people in the waiting area of this restaurant not wearing a mask. It's like, that's the video you want to make? Like that's what you're gonna be so mad, rather than just sitting there with your mask on, trusting in your own mask. You'd rather just leave the restaurant, go sit in your car, and rant about all the people not wearing masks. I just like that's how you want to spend your time. Okay.
Well, like I'm saying, when you try to get in their shoes, right? When you try to just walk a mile in their shoes, you have to understand, right? They're being fed constantly this message. You have to be afraid of anyone who's not abiding by these, arbitrary rules, basically. Right. And so it's no surprise, that you have people who are just on edge, thinking that everybody is an imminent risk to them. And so no wonder, not only this, as you put it, COVID stand over the past couple of years, but even within that, remember all the BLM riots, right? So spurred on by the unfortunate deaths, like people like George Floyd, and other names, sorry, that they escape me at the moment, but
Breonna.
Yes, Breonna Taylor, and you had riots as a result, and that led into, okay, well, we need to start teaching our kids differently. So now you have CRT kind of infiltrating in the schools, and really it's kind of been building up for a few years already.
Right.
But we're raising a generation now who already is, based on statistics, they're already the most socially conscious generation. And so it's not so much about, what do the data say, but it's more about social justice, emotional arguments that really win the day with the new generation. But now we have explicitly in their curriculum turning them against other people solely based on race or perceived racial, outcomes. Yep. And so, we have an easily offended generation. And I wonder also if it's kind of like a direct result of the creature comforts that we have. Where we have it made, man. Like, look, we have this technology before us. So many things are just at easy reach, especially with young kids, right? We have information that is just at the tips of our fingers. We're just a few keystrokes, and we have everything that we need. Yeah. And we're the most prosperous generation, but now we're also the most easily offended.
Yeah, and that makes me think about the idea that the love of many will grow cold. Right. So what do you think that means? The love of many will grow cold.
Off the cuff, just offhand, the love of many will grow cold. I think I just related to just people being able to turn one another, but that's my best guess right now.
What's interesting is when Paul presents us with another prophecy about the end of times. It's 2 Timothy chapter 3, where he says that the last days will be perilous times, and then proceeds to tell us that men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, right? So think about that for a moment, right? So they're lovers of themselves and they're unloving. They're lovers of money and they're unloving. Mm-hmm. So it's important to remember that there's different kinds of words for love, right? He goes on to say that they're lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. So you find, the word love there being used twice. They're lovers, philodonos, lovers of pleasure, rather than philotheos, lovers of God. Mm-hmm. So philo, being the word love there, brotherly love, Philadelphia, right? City of brotherly love. Philodonos is a lover of pleasure, whereas Philotheos is lover of God. So there's a love there, but it's not for God. It's for personal pleasure, right? It says that they're going to be lovers of themselves, philoatos, self-love. So there's a love there, but at the same time, they are unloving, right? They're unloving. They're without natural affection. So all that is very interesting as Paul is describing these last days, these perilous times, and people will be philoatos, or lovers of themselves. So when I hear about the love of many growing cold, it's a love for others will be less, and a love of self will be more. And as a result, they're easily offended. Because anything that, offends them or hurts their feelings or is in conflict with their point of view, they can't handle it, which is why they're going to turn around and become, haters of others or unloving, while continuing to build up this love of self. And this is exactly what we see happening in the world today. We're watching as, many are offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. And then he says in verse 11, then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. So all that's kind of connected in with this, I'm easily offended, therefore, because you might offend me, I don't really have any love for you. I'm going to take that energy and direct it at self-love and seek out the money that I need and the pleasure that I want and all these sorts of things. It's all about me.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the general trend of self-care, self-esteem movement where you see a lot of memes just pass through of, hey, take time to love yourself, take time to care for yourself because you're important. Just remember you're important, that kind of stuff, right. Which is all true. I mean, we definitely, for those that need to hear it, for those that are depressed, you need to know that, yes, you are valuable, you are loved, but what a lot of this self-help and self-esteem movement fails to understand is that this kind of self-love doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like, you're valuable because God created you. You're made in the image of God, right? You have that stamp. You have God's fingerprint on your life. It's not just because you yourself exist and I'm just giving you value. That doesn't happen. A lot of this self-care movement is just about focus on you first and only you, and then you can go and love others. In certain contexts, that's true. When you're filled with the love of Christ, you can go and then fill others with that same love.
Right.
But you can't fill yourself with self-love. It's just not going to happen. And that's where I see it's just been, the narrative has been flipped where, and this gets back to easily offended. When you view the world as revolving around you, and you have to make sure that you're okay first before you go out into the world and do stuff, but that you're the God of your own universe, then of course, if anything bad happens, you have to take it personally because it's a direct attack on the world, which revolves around you, apparently.
Right. Sure.
So easily offended falls right into that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, then there's the whole issue of, is depression caused by a lack of self-esteem, or is depression caused by an over-estimation of self? So
the higher you are, the harder, or the higher your fall is.
I certainly recognize that there is depression in people who hate themselves, right? So but I would assume that their depression is based in a complete lack of care of self, not being upset about your depressive state. Those who are upset about their depressive state, assume that they should have a better life than they're having, which is pride and self-love. So my estimation is that most people that suffer from depression, not all, of course, but I think that most people that suffer from depression here in America are depressed because they expected more for themselves, because they love themselves so much.
Is it kind of like hedonism,
Yeah,
where, like the famous person that I know is a philosopher, I think it was Camus, Albert Camus, where he documented, like, he basically lived as a hedonist.
Yeah.
Pleasure, all the earthly pleasures, fleshly pleasures, that kind of stuff. But then in the end, wound up being depressed.
It's depressing
because it's empty.
Because it's completely empty, and you'll never actually be satisfied. It kind of comes back to the Rolling Stones. I can't get no satisfaction, right? I try and I try and I try, but I can't get me no satisfaction, right? Mm-hmm. So, the further you try, the more you try to get that satisfaction out of whatever you think is going to satisfy, you only discover, it's not there either, and which only leads you deeper into depression. Yeah. So I think this is one reason why we're watching Jesus' prophecy about the end of times coming to pass. The love of many is growing cold, because there is no satisfaction in self-love. Mm-hmm. We love ourselves. So much so that Jesus said that should be the baseline standard for how we love everyone else. Love others as you love yourself. It's the basis for the golden rule.
Yeah.
So, I clearly this prophecy is coming to pass.
Yeah, and so now, well said. We get into kind of we're getting towards the end here, but we get into admittedly a little difficult passage here. It's a fig tree parable, starting in verse 32. Jesus goes on to say that, now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things take place.
Yeah. This might be something that we need to come back and just, tackle in a single setting, to just consider the fig tree, which I believe is Israel, to consider the budding of the branches and what that means. We can go back and look at the 48, War of Independence. We can look at the 67 war. I mean, we can start looking at, what is, how is the fig tree Israel? What does it mean that the branches are budding? But ultimately what we do see is that the generation that sees the budding of the fig tree, the restoration of Israel, which I think will culminate in the creation of the third temple, the generation that sees those things take place is not going to pass away. And maybe we just do a whole show just on that.
Yep. Maybe even also this next passage, the 37 through 39, the days of Noah.
Yeah, maybe we revisit that, I don't know if we do it next month or sometime soon.
Good. You heard it here, people. But, so essentially, if we kind of boil down, I guess I need to take a pause here. We're about to end our stream to Austin Cable Access Channel 11. We're about to enter into our Q&A portion, but Channel 11, sorry, we're going to have to let you go in a little bit. But jump onto our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Calvary South Austin. We're still live streaming there as we get into our Q&A portion. We'd love to have you over there. Submit those questions if you haven't so already on the live chat, and they'll queue them up there. Remember to subscribe, hit that like button, and hopefully we'll see you on the flip side. We'll be back in just a little bit. All right, welcome back. We're still streaming live here on YouTube. Thank you for joining us after a little break. Like I said, we're about to enter into our Q&A portion, but first of all, we did just want to wrap up our conversation. So we've been talking about Matthew chapter 24, living in the last days, and we've essentially laid out this pattern here that, number one, Jesus, being a historical figure, he's proved himself to be a reliable source when it comes to predicting the future. He not only predicted the destruction of the temple there in 70 AD, but he also predicted his own death, burial, and physical resurrection from the dead. And so he's proved himself to be a reliable source. Number one, also we have to take Jesus at his word. We have to take all of Jesus' teachings together. We can't just take, golden rule Jesus, but leave out the prophecy. Prophecy is going to be in there, and we have to take a good hard look at it, investigate it, and see what can we glean from it. And that's what we've been trying to do tonight with Matthew chapter 24, Jesus setting the stage for us, answering the disciples' question, when will these things be? When will be the end of the age? How can we tell? And Jesus lays it out beautifully for us. There's going to be wars, rumors of wars, pestilences, earthquakes. People's love will grow cold. People will be easily offended. A whole host of things that we need to, as I've been mentioning, at the very least, we need to start becoming aware as Christians, as believers. If you haven't done so already, we need to become more aware of what's going on in the world around us so that we can be prepared. Number one, to know that Jesus is coming soon. Of course, this has been the message that has been being spread even since Paul's time, as we mentioned earlier, that Paul believed it was imminent. And he was preaching that loud and clear to his congregants. But 2,000 years, how much closer are we now? Jesus is coming soon, and we cannot be found lazy. We cannot be found sitting on our hands doing nothing while our Lord and Savior is coming very, very soon to judge the world. In fact, I wanted to mention the very next chapter, Matthew chapter 25, Jesus goes on to share the parable of the 10 virgins and the parable of the talents. And essentially, the morals of those parables were that when Jesus comes, what will he find his servants doing? Will they be ready for his arrival? Or will they be the ones that were lazy and did nothing, and they're going to have to suffer the consequences of that? So Jesus is coming soon, and that should spur us as believers into action. Number one, to make sure that our relationship with Jesus is solidified, is set in stone, obviously by accepting Jesus as our Lord and Savior through faith, but then also going out and accomplishing the Great Commission. There's so many lost people out there who don't know Jesus, who, when it's their time, if they do not have not accepted Jesus as their Savior and have not accepted that gift of forgiveness, then they will suffer an eternity of punishment there in hell. And so as Christians, we need to be the ones accomplishing that Great Commission and spreading the good news, the gospel message to those people in hopes that God will forgive them and they will accept that gift of forgiveness. So I did want to throw out that Matthew chapter 25. That'd be good for those of you out there interested in reading more. Read the next chapter and you'll see kind of the summation of what Jesus was talking about in chapter 24. Yeah. Bunjee, you got anything else to share?
Yeah, no, it's good encouragement to just recognize that the time is short. Our life is but a vapor of smoke. It appears and is gone before you know it. And we can continue to think that, we've got all the time in the world, but we don't know that we have tomorrow. Tomorrow's not promised to us, and the goal of the Christian ought to be to spend the limited time that we do have reaching people with the love of the Lord Jesus Christ, so that they might trust in Jesus and be saved. And one reason why this is so important is because Jesus not only promised his return, but also promised to judge those who rejected him, and that would then include everlasting punishment for those who rejected his free gift of grace. And so with that, we ought to be warning the world about the coming judgment, so that we're not only informing people about his return, and showing people the prophecies that support our belief in his second coming, but with that also recognizing the warning that when the day of judgment comes, those who rejected him will not be able to stand, and they will not be able to enter into heaven. And the reason why is because they're still in their sins. Thankfully, the Lord Jesus died on the cross and received the judgment and the punishment that we deserve, so that our sins could be punished, but so that we could also escape that punishment. So, with Jesus having received it already for us. And so with that, if you haven't already, I encourage you tonight to trust in Jesus Christ. and receive by faith that free gift of forgiveness that he purchased with his own blood when he died in our place there on the cross.
Awesome. Well put. Thank you, Bunjee. Well, we have a couple of questions just lined up here for our Q&A portion. Again, if you're on that live chat, we encourage you to submit a question dealing with living in the last days. Anything that you have always wanted to ask, feel free to jump on the live chat and ask there. Of course, if you ever think of something after the fact, you can, or you're watching this episode after it's been aired live, you can still submit a question if you're interested. We do have an email set up for this kind of stuff. You can email outreach@calvarysouthaustin.com. Again, that's outreach@calvarysouthaustin.com. We'd love to hear from you. Well, let's see. One very practical question here. When should we start stockpiling food? As a result of, hey, I'm hearing Jesus. Should I start stockpiling food?
Well, Jesus did promise that there would be famines in the last days. We're certainly seeing signs of that coming down the pike. China is already stockpiling food, for their population, and we're certainly seeing a strain on the supply chain. So, I think at the very least, I think every person would be wise to have a month's supply of whatever their family needs to make it through a month. I think that's just, safe. That's just basic emergency preparedness. Mm-hmm. And, what you don't want happening in your home is you wait until there's an obvious need and run down to the grocery store only to find that there's a line halfway down the block just to try to even get in. We saw that happen, at the beginning of the
almost
pandemic.
A year ago,
yeah. So it doesn't take much for our grocery stores to be cleared out.
Yeah.
We certainly see, that most cities have large warehouses where there's lots of food stored so that there can be a supply in case there is some level of breakdown. But it doesn't take long for those warehouses to be cleared out either.
Yeah.
So with that, not wanting to scare anybody or get people freaking out and becoming hoarders or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I do think that most families would do well to just make sure that they have a month's supply of whatever food it takes to get past a hiccup and
yeah.
that at least gives you a month to figure out what you're going to do if the issue persists.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, storing seeds that you can plant in your backyard isn't a bad idea either.
Just general emergency preparedness. Yep. Nothing scary about that.
Nope.
Awesome. Why is NASA hiring theologians? Is this true? What's going on here? Have you heard anything about this?
Sure, I have. Yeah, the plan was to talk about this a little bit along with the Days of Noah prophecy, which we'll have to come back to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so NASA has recruited a British priest to prepare the religious for the discovery of alien life. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. So Reverend Dr. Andrew Davison, a priest and theology professor at the University of Cambridge, is among 24 theologians who are participating in a program sponsored by NASA at the Space Agency's Center for Theological Inquiry, CTI, at Princeton University. So much for the flat Earth theory that NASA is trying to convince everybody that the world is a globe in order to stop people from believing in God.
Yeah. I have a feeling this is just like a reality TV show. 24 theologians.
So, according to this article, theologians are attempting to assess how major religions would react to news of alien life being found. And so that's...
We're going to see this on a TV show soon.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'll tune in.
Real world priests.
NASA files.
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, one NASA expert said we may not discover life for 100 years, or we may discover it next week. So this is not you have the whole SETI program that they were looking for extraterrestrial life out there and whatnot.
Yes.
Meanwhile, completely ignoring what the Bible says about extraterrestrial life.
Yes, yes.
You know, the Bible's perfectly clear that God, our Creator, not only created humans to populate this planet, but also angelic beings. There are different levels of angelic beings. There are archangels, and you know, there are seraphim and cherubim, and you know, the incredible beast with the 4, you know, different faces, and just, you know, 6 wings on this one and 4 wings on that one, and then, you know, you even get into Ezekiel chapter 1, and you see that, you know, with these angelic beings, some of them have these circular wheels within wheels that are all lit up with eyes all about, you know, like lights. That go forward and backwards and left and right, making these 90-degree turns that go along, you know, with the angelic being, and the spirit of the angelic being is within this, you know, wheel within a wheel, which we would probably call, you know, if we were to see it, a UFO. So, you know, this NASA search for alien life, you know, I have no doubt that they're eventually going to discover it. And I think that we need to recognize, you know, what this is when they start telling us that they've made contact. Yep. And we need to recognize that, you know, those angels that would come with a antichrist message are demons, and should be, you know, recognized as what they are. Yeah,
we did a whole episode on aliens, right? A past episode. So again, if you're a new viewer, go check out our past episodes. Jump on our YouTube channel. We actually have a Studio 118 YouTube channel. If you look up Studio 118 on YouTube, you'll find our very own channel. You can check out our past episodes there. We did do one on aliens.
Yep.
Very cool. So yeah, it is confirmed. A reality TV show. I'm kidding, but they got 24 priests, I guess, or just religious leaders from various faiths, and seeing how they would react.
So according to this article, there are 24 theologians.
Theologians, there you go.
Which includes a British priest.
Okay. And one of the Messiah claimants.
Maybe.
One of the Russian Jesus figures. Wow. All right, well, yeah, we definitely unpacked a lot here in Matthew 24. I think this was a very great episode, living in the last days. I hope we encouraged you, and I hope we challenged you. If there's any skeptics out there, again, we just hope that this challenges you to consider the truth claims of Christianity. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
I think we do have one here.
Oh, what do you
got? So the question is posed, I think, twice here. Does mental illness play a role in the end time prophecy? And when is mental illness, depression, an attack from the devil versus just simply loving yourself?
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to tackle that one?
You got any insight on that?
Not off the top of my head, but let me read it a little closer.
Is that just your depression?
Yeah, I don't really feel like tackling it.
And then Jeremy lets us know that he just emailed another one.
Okay, I got several different mediums here.
All right. So yeah, I if I understand the question about mental illness, depression, and end times prophecy, I'm not here to diagnose the difference between, I guess, you know, what would be a mental, a true mental illness, someone that
clinically depressed
isn't, yeah. So there's that, but then, how much of this would be, an attack of the devil, or I would even take it out further and say, when would this be considered demonic possession and not just mental depression? I really couldn't begin to even diagnose that right now. What I do know is that mental illness is a real thing, and demonic possession is a real thing. In my own experience in dealing with someone who was demonically possessed, there was a seething, outspoken hatred for Jesus Christ that was evident. Versus someone who is just depressed because life didn't work out the way they wanted, or there's a chemical reaction happening in their brain that's beyond their control. So I think that I don't know that I could speak in broad generalities to answer the question about the difference between, a mentally ill person who's depressed versus someone who is demonically possessed. But I do believe that, when I came across a person who was truly demonically possessed, that the Lord gave me all the tools I needed at that moment to understand what to do. And the Lord did, in fact, give me the power to cast that demon out. And I watched all that just unfold before my very eyes. And it wasn't something that I personally manufactured or somehow made happen or went through a quick diagnosis of the individual. No. It was just, there was a supernatural situation that went down that the Holy Spirit empowered me to deal with. So, I would just be careful. I would be careful before you call someone demon possessed because they're depressed. And I would also be careful to not, clump every person who claims to be mentally ill or depressed as, it just being a natural situation. It might be, a true demonic possession. I wouldn't rush to conclusions on either side of it. Mm-hmm. But I would just seek the wisdom of the Lord to guide in all of that. I do believe that demon-possessed people can appear to be just clinically mentally ill, and I think that there are people who could be mentally ill who appear to be demon-possessed. So you got to be really careful with all that.
If I could offer the flip side of, at the very least, I think the church should consider playing more of an active role in helping these people overcome whatever they're dealing, whether it be demon possession or true depression, right? Where, especially as we've noted that there's an increase in this self-love leading to depression kind of attitude in this generation. The church should be there to accept and to help people reorient their lives and reorient their minds and their souls towards, their Creator, rather than perhaps what a lot of people might do is just shun these people. I don't really understand them, or they're just weird people. Cast them out, or just I don't have the time or patience to deal with them, and then they wind up seeking, bad answers elsewhere.
Right. Yep.
So at the very least, the church should take it seriously.
Yeah, and be Spirit-led, because we also don't want to throw pearls before swine and then end up being attacked in the process, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is that being careful, whether we're dealing with someone who is mentally ill or demonically possessed, there's still a need to be cautious and be Spirit-led in what is the proper response of the church in helping this specific individual and treating it that way. Is like you're not going to be able to just have this one size fits all solution. I mean, it's not like a vaccine, right? So you can't just have this one size fits all solution for every single person that is either struggling with mental illness or demonic possession. Like, I mean, it's, even with Jesus as he ministers to, the demoniacs in his day and age, it's like you don't see him dealing with every single one of them the same exact way. So there is that importance of just being Spirit-led in moving forward with solutions for these people as we try to minister to them.
Yeah, good point.
Yep.
See, we got one more, the one that was emailed here. Yep. It mentions, is CERN, C-E-R-N, referenced or mentioned in the Bible? It has been in the news again after a few years. I think it's starting up again in March. So CERN being what is it? Is that where the Hadron Collider resides?
Yeah. I'm not up on the latest news of CERN, but I am concerned about it.
That was good. That was a good attempt.
There was no discernment in that statement.
Whoa, you can tell it's getting late here.
So what is?
Is it referenced in the Bible?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think that. I think that.
Is there a Bible code I can apply?
You just get out the gematria and type in CERN and see
I
what
look
comes up.
diagonally. Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything, and I would have to just chalk this up to I should probably look into it and maybe come back later with an answer. At this point in time, I'm not aware of anything in the Bible about CERN. And so, but then that gets into the speculation of what CERN is and what it's actually trying to accomplish, so it, is it trying to open portals to, other dimensions or these sorts of things? And I wouldn't know enough about it to give a meaningful answer at this point.
We'll see. Maybe next month if we wind up tackling the Days of Noah stuff.
Yeah, that might be the way to go with that one. But also we have one here. Is it true that our alien brothers may not need redemption like the Catholic?
Hero tick.
So yeah.
What?
I don't even know what to do with that.
I don't understand it. Is it true that our alien brothers may not need redemption, like the Catholic heretic astronomer says?
So apparently, Jesuit Father Jose Funes is, am I understanding it correctly that he has said that aliens don't need to be redeemed? So I'm not familiar with what he said, but I would suggest that Jesus Christ became a man to die for mankind, and not for fallen angels. So my understanding is that these aliens are nothing more than fallen angels, and as fallen angels, there is no redemption for them. Jesus did not become an alien or a demon and die for aliens or demons, but rather became a man and died for the sins of men.
Go read Hebrews. Only God knows who wrote it. All right, with that...
You've been waiting to set the record straight.
Yes. Well, that marks the end of our Q&A, and that marks the end of our episode of Living in the Last Days. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for being patient with us and waiting 2 weeks for the airing of this episode. We'll be back in just a couple of weeks with our next episode, so be on the lookout for announcements for that. In the meantime, go check out our past episodes on our Studio 118 channel on YouTube. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and share the links with all your social media platforms. Again, we're here at Calvary South Austin. If you need to get a hold of us, call 512-576-5433. Until next time, we'll catch you later. See ya.